I'm resident of Collinwood. I'm supposed to be the professional one, but I'm crazy. With me today is Don Schmidt. How are you, man?
Good. I'm good. It's a little warm out here, but I'm considering everything. I'm doing well. I'm still vertical, so that's a plus.
That's always a plus. I like that. When did you first get into Dark Shadows, man?
Um, originally,
Yes, originally.
I think I was about 7 years old, and I started watching it after school, and it was. Well, thinking back, I think it was late in the series. I think it was probably the last year because my earliest memories of it were 1840.
Oh, wow.
I can tell you that I had a conversation with my sister not too long ago, and she said, well, in 1970 we moved down to San Diego, but before that we lived in Los Angeles. And she said she remembered, she's 10 years older than me, so she said, I remember it being on because it was just something to have on. And I think I vaguely remember maybe my mom watching it, or they just had it on, and that was probably in the 60s. But definitely I remember that last year, and you've probably seen me post. I remember the last day. I remember reading a TV guide as not even 8 years old that it was going off the air, and I had it on, and my mom and my sister were playing cards, and I told my mom this is the last day, and my mom made a remark how sad that was. My
Wow.
mom was pretty cool. My parents were, we've had conversations. My parents were the ones that used to watch Kolchak, what's his
The Night Stalker.
The Night Stalker, and I wasn't allowed to watch it because it was too scary, but I digress. But yeah, that's my earliest memories, was the original run of the show as a little kid, wanting to get home, like everybody says, because you had to watch Dark Shadows.
May I say, shame on your parents for not letting you watch Kolchak. Shame on them.
They thought it was too scary. I could watch Dark Shadows, but I could not watch The Night Stalker because they thought it was too scary. And I remember when it was on, and I remember hearing it was really cool, but I had to go to bed. I could not watch it.
I thank God for my mom because she was a corruptible woman because she got me into horror. That's who got me into horror.
Yeah.
The first thing she had me watch was John Carpenter's Halloween, and from then on, it was like a horror list. I had the biggest crash course of my life in horror. And then she's like, "What else?" She would come to me to see what I was watching after a while because I was watching stuff. Again, she had her limits because there's things she wouldn't watch or didn't approve of necessarily for her because she was a mom. And I get it because I'm a parent now, and I got it from her perspective, even though I wasn't one then. But I started watching Dark Shadows, and I said, I'm watching this thing called Dark Shadows, and I love it to death. And I was hooked. I became hooked right then and there, and I loved it ever since.
When was that? When was that? Was that when it was going on Sci-Fi, or
Yep.
when? Yeah,
Right.
I remember when I was flipping channels one day, and my eyes got big. I went, "Oh my God, Dark Shadows is back!" I was in my late 20s, and it's like it's black and white, and it's the episodes I never got to see. I'm sorry, I'm a very animated person, and I just was like, "Oh my God!" And I couldn't believe it. It was like a miracle. The show was back, and that was a very famous run, as I gather from what I read on the net, and that's really cool that that's when you were first exposed to it.
Yeah, I had watched it took me 2 years later to watch House of Dark Shadows when it aired on TV, and I watched Night of Dark Shadows, and then obviously the 2012 movie came out with Johnny Depp. But who is your favorite character?
That's really hard. If I had to choose, if I have to choose one, I've got to say it's Professor Stokes.
Now, I will admit to this being my bad because I never explained the rules to my children. No, man, you can cheat. You can have more than one.
Well, okay. Well, Professor Stokes, but I'll tell you who I just dearly love is Carolyn Stoddard.
Right.
Nancy Barrett. Carolyn, her character really evolves and grows up before my eyes during this run I've watched on Prime. I just love Carolyn Stoddard. I just think she's the bomb. She grows up really fast. Anyway, I won't make it a long answer for you. I just Carolyn Stoddard would probably be next.
Carolyn Stoddard?
Yeah.
Okay. I like that. I love your picks. When I first watched it, I've watched it from the very first episode, and Victoria Winters hooked me and never let go. And I love Alexandra Isles' portrayal. I think she is it. When it comes to Victoria Winters, there's no better one. Don't get me wrong, I love the revival. I think Joanna Goins did a fabulous job. But to me, Alexandra Isles just blew me away. And I can't really, don't get me wrong, Barnabas is a great character. I love him. Yeah. I love Jonathan Fred. But for me, where I started was that girl sitting on that train. And it felt like I was in the seat across from her, watching her. I felt like a mini Michael Myers almost, from I meant her no harm. But I'm just like, this girl's crazy going all this way up to this mansion not knowing anybody, right?
I love her too. I love the character. I love the actress. She's one of my favorites. When she was no longer on the show, it left a void, and I hear you. I really love that character too. She goes through so much.
What did you think of the first ghost? She sees it in the house when they have that. It's all dark. The candles are out. David's gone. What were your thoughts about that?
Well, I was wondering. Well, I guess my initial reaction was, well, leading up to it, when are we going to get introduced? When is Dan Curtis going to crack that door open for us? And he kind of set the mood. And when you see that, because it's really kind of a silhouette. It was somebody. There was somebody standing there. But my reaction was, we're finally getting this show on the road. It is going to happen. It's happening right now. And I was just excited. I was thinking, this is it. This is that moment. That's my thought.
No, it felt. I think the best setup for this is your gal, Nancy Barrett. Carolyn Stoddard Collins sets this up beautifully. Calling Wood by candlelight. When she says that, you feel something's coming, but you're not sure what. And you know David's gone. Elizabeth sort of scolds Vicky again for David, but we know better. We know David's the son of Satan, sort of. But
he's actually one of my favorite characters. I think David he was like one of the smartest people on the show. But I digress. Go ahead.
No, I agree with you. David Hennessy, what an actor, right? But I think just the setup for it, and then when they reveal the silhouette, it's like, oh my God, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
It is. It was a, it's not talked about much, and I'm glad that you brought up, but that was that was part of television history, because as we well know, there's nothing been like the show before or since. It is if on TV history, it is a very historic show, and that is the moment.
It is. There's so many things that happen in Dark Shadows that cause a domino effect. The first domino effect is Bill Malloy himself finally when the bleeder valve accident happens. Bill Malloy comes to the realization, I can't let this kid grow up this way.
Right.
I think that's why he does it, why he goes to Burke. If I give you Roger, will you let them alone? He goes, I noticed you said just Roger. He goes, yeah, you noticed, right?
Well, he mentioned, I think he had an argument with Roger, I remember, and he mentioned like, Carolyn and Liz Stoddard, and I said, that little boy, which obviously he's met and he cares about, but he does not care about. He must have been with Burke. You're right. He did not care about Roger. Yeah. That you're right. That was that conversation. I remember that.
What were your thoughts on Bill just doing that? Was he just? Do you think he just finally had enough of this for him.
Yeah, he it's a small town. He was close to the family.
Yeah.
I think he cared a lot about He cared about the three of them, and he was done.
Yeah.
And he was a ball buster. He didn't put up with crap. I mean, I'm sure you've studied or not. I mean, he was out on the sea. He hard work. He'd been through a lot in his life. It's not an easy life up there. Maybe we could talk about Maine in another part of the discussion, but no, he wasn't going to put up with it. And he cared about the Collins family, sans Roger Collins.
No, I agree. I think you're right. Maine itself brought out the tough weather, the tough sea. I think the best example of this is when the sea hits the rocks beneath Widow's Hill. It gives you a sense of the danger that the Collins ships go out into the sea, and that sea is rough. So here's Bill Malloy, and I agree with you, this seasoned, tough pro captain who would rather be out on the sea doing boats than sort of being behind a desk and doing paperwork. That's his forte. You're right. He's this tough Maine guy who's no nonsense really, but loves the family like they're his. That they are it to him. I agree, 1,000%. What were your thoughts on Burke coming back 5 years for good behavior? Gets off. He only spends 5 years out of a 10-year sentence because he's been a good boy, we'll say. But what were your thoughts on, here's this guy, you don't know who he is coming off this train, but when they hear the name Devlin, when Roger hears that name, he loses it.
Well, about Burke coming back, you know, just from Roger's actions in the early episodes, that this guy is a problem. He's born with a silver spoon in his mouth.
Right.
He and I don't know if we knew then, but he blew through his inheritance, and he's only there at the good graces of his sister. Yeah. And he's been a problem. He doesn't. And we all know those people, Joel. They don't think they're accountable to anybody. They think they're better than everybody else. And there was karma. There was obviously karma building in his life. But having Burke come back, the past sins were going to be dealt with, and Mitchell Ryan was perfectly cast for that role to say, I'm Mr. Accountability, and I'm here now, and it's time to pay the piper, and I'm pissed. Those are my thoughts on that.
Right. He is so matter of fact that when he comes to town and we see Conrad Bain, Mr. Wells, greet him like, why, Burke?
Yeah.
I don't remember anyone. And it's like, oh, shit. Because the pain, what sells this too is Conrad Bain, the pain on his face. The pain of, and Vicky looks at him, you know him? And he goes, yep, ever since he was this high, like a little kid. And it's like, oh, fuck, that dude's got issues.
Well, I think I've read on the net that the whole, and it really makes sense, that I don't know if Dan Curtis did this on purpose, but it kind of is drawn from the Count of Monte Cristo, where he comes back and it's, I'm going to get y'all for doing what you did to me, and I've got so much money and the smarts, and I will succeed at getting you. It's
funny because they mentioned the book, The Count of Monte Cristo, in the series, so I could see that, sort of. They're sort of taken from that. But I think what Burke sort of brings is, to sort of add to that a lot, is Ryan Mitchell, one minute he could be talking to you real calmly, and the next minute he starts raising that voice at you like, damn, dude, where'd that come from?
Well, yeah, that character just turned it on a dime. So it made he kept you off balance. You never know when he was going to turn and who he was going to turn on. And he turned on Carolyn.
Yeah.
I mean, if he used her in a manner that, I couldn't do that, but it takes a certain person to be able to do that and pull it off. I'm not that person because I don't want to go there.
Right.
But he could just turn on a dime, and it was great. It was great theater, but it was disconcerting.
When we first meet Carolyn, she's dancing in the Blue Whale. Here's this lovely blonde-haired Nancy Barrett. Oh my God, what a knockout! What a beauty, right?
It's just boom. It was we go from a scene that's very calm with Elizabeth dressed to the nines and, having coffee or tea with Victoria, and then boom, we're at the Blue Whale, and Robert Colbert's music just goes on, and she's doing that mid-60 thing and flipping her hair around, and it's just juxtaposed like, okay, we got this calm household, but we got little wild child with nothing to do in this little bird here.
Right.
And then you go to the detective and Burke at the bar.
The detective, if my wife could shake it like that,
go ahead, Joel.
No, I was just, go ahead. I was just.
Well, somebody being, because I'm 58, that's how TV was then.
Yeah.
And it's like, ooh, you couldn't do that today, but I'm so glad we have this on videotape because it's just how it was. And it was just a throwback to my childhood. That's all. He's wearing his fedora and flipping it back, and people are smoking, and yeah, you couldn't talk like that on TV now.
My grandpap said that's just how people talked. Like back in, he goes, errors are all different. He goes, when I was a kid, it was this way, and when your mom was a kid, it was this way. And you can go ask her about that, and I did. And she goes, yeah, when in the 60s, this is how it was, like how men, talked about women. I don't know how it is now, and no, I don't want to know. But because I was a teenager at this time, when I was asking her this stuff. But you're right. I've had such a unique talkage of when my grandparents were alive and my mom was alive. I would talk to them because they knew about the past stuff.
Right.
But because how else are you supposed to learn? You know what I mean? You learn from your elders.
That's how I was.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me ask you, what did you think of David removing the bleeder valve from his dad's car?
That kind of threw me for a loop. That was harsh.
Yes.
This was an afternoon soap, but man, that was some serious that was some serious shit.
It was, yes.
I think he was looking at Popular Mechanics, and he figured it out. I'm going, man, this family has some major ass issues. And I don't know what happened between Roger and David, but it is not good. And of course, Liz is always there. She was like the one person left in the Collins family that was holding all of that together. And it was rough. It was a little hard to watch.
I think what let me know a lot about Liz and like how Liz was holding things together when she's downstairs playing the piano, and you see her sort of like fall, her face goes down, and Vicky's standing behind her. It's like, man, this woman could just lose it at any minute, and you don't know what it's gonna do. But the next morning, it's like nothing ever happened to her,
right.
And Vicky doesn't really, she's like, she doesn't want to like bring it up to her because I think Vicky sort of respects her in a weird way, and I don't blame her. That's what I love about Victoria Winters. It's like the actors and characters sort of synced so well with one another. They knew what not to say. They just let the silence let the audience tell the story at times. And David, when David removes the bleeder off, you're right. It's so dark. It's fucking sick as hell, because I'm like, man, if that kid would do that to his dad, what won't he do to what will he do to a complete stranger?
Well, yeah, and I love the character of David Collins. The only thing that disturbed me, and it was like you could tell that he was going to do something, is when Carolyn brought up the fact that he drowned his cat. And I'm going, oh, man, did they have to write that in? I didn't need to hear that. That really got me upset.
Yeah, the first he said, he told Vicky what he wanted her to stay, or he loved her or something, I think.
Yeah.
And the last thing he said that to was his cat, and he drowned the cat. And it's like, oh man, poor Vicky.
I know.
I think,
and it was it. I was thinking about this today because it's like he locks her in that room.
Yeah.
And she could have died, and she sees the ghost of Bill Malloy. And I think you've talked. You may have talked about this with Mark on one of your podcasts, which I love, by the way. I listened to that late at night. I feel like a high school. I contacted him via Twitter on Messenger, and I said it's like being back in high school and scaring each other in the middle of the night talking about these stories. But anyway, he locks her in this room, and then she sees the ghost, and then David says, "Oh, you're cool now because you saw a ghost, so I won't endanger your life anymore." God.
Right?
Whatever works.
Right? It was like this kid was one of the most dangerous elements of the house.
Yes.
But at times you didn't know when he would be dangerous, and that's what made the show fun too. Well, so you meet Roger, you meet David, you meet Victoria, obviously. We meet Matt. What were your thoughts on Maggie Evans, Catherine Lee Scott's character?
I've read a lot, and I thought it was just me when I saw she was like one way that first episode. She had that red hair, that blondish, dirty blonde hair, and she was kind of like that, tough, hard knock person, and then that character totally disappeared. And I felt bad for Maggie. Really had it tough. I thought she has this dad that her mom died of probably cancer. She had a dad that there was something wrong with him because he became an alcoholic, and she had to go to work every day at the Collinsport Inn coffee shop.
Nope.
And in this Maine village, and I felt bad for her, but I really liked her. I mean, she had some bad luck. I mean, she was terrorized by Barnabas, and then she had to cling on to Willie. Then she had a nervous breakdown, and then like a year later, Jewel, when I'm going through the show, she started to remember, and there she is with freaking Willie in that freaking crypt, having to rehash this all over again a year later. She's tough, but she's over and over and over again. I mean, she's really tough. I mean, I really like the character. I have a lot of respect for her. I feel for her, and to me, I thought, God, and the act Catherine Lee Scott. I mean, she's beautiful now as for at the age that she is. But I look at her and go, oh my God, she was absolutely beautiful. And sometimes that could get in the way. I'm trying not to let it get in the way, but I look at her and went, what? I mean, she's just beautiful, and no wonder Barnabas wanted her. And I mean, she's just beautiful. But I love the character. A lot of respect. I
really liked it when Barnabas kidnaps her. Oh. He is. I never got the sense he was going to kill her, even though he threatens it. And and I've always pointed this out, when Jonathan Frick comes out of that coffin as Barnabas, we see him at the old house after David has told him about the ghost of Josette. Now, Laura, the Phoenix, and we'll get into her, but she knew Josette. But here's Barnabas standing there looking up at the portrait going, I was a Collins. Where were you? He knows her. This is another person who knew Josette. And it's like, oh my God, he knew her on an intimate level. Because when you're talking to a portrait like that, there's more to that.
Well, and when he did that monologue, which I think was one of the best monologues he ever, moments he had on the series, he was very he put himself out to be very vulnerable, and it was so freaking touching. And you remember how it ended? He says, something about having a life, whatever that will be, and it faded to black. And I'm going, oh my, I mean, just to let you, it's not this. This isn't about me, but I have my degrees in theater, so I have a degree in drama. So I look at things maybe differently than a lot of people do, and I'm going, this is theater on film. And Jonathan Frid and that writing, that moment was they all nailed it. It's one of my favorite moments on the series.
It's beautiful. It is. It's really a touchy moment between a man who isn't pissed. He's just hurt. He just has hurt feelings about all of this. He didn't act. It let me know right then, this dude is not Dracula. He's not just some bloodsucker. He's a human being. And I think that's the one thing I'll say. If I pointed to, people say, well, when do you point that Barnabas is a human? I say right away, because go look at the conversation between him and Josette's portrait. Not between him and Liz, just him and Liz, him and Victoria, him and David, him and that portrait, because that's the one defining moment I go to. What to you, like, from Jonathan Frid being this amazing actor, what stood out to you the most with him?
God, that's really a hard question. I don't know how to answer that. What stood out to me? I think how he could be. Well, I'm just going to throw off the top of my head how he could be suave and charming one second and be like really mean and evil. I'm telling you, Jewel, I had some difficulty when he was beating Willie with that cane. Although we didn't see John Carlin literally get beaten, but that was intense, and it was just like he could turn it on from one to the other. But he was charming, he was vulnerable, he was angry, he could just be super mean and didn't care. To me, it was kind of like his human side and the cursed side were always at war with each other.
Yeah. And
he just brought an element to a vampire that nobody had done from Bram Stoker's novel to that moment. And and I think you've talked about it before on some of your podcasts. He took it in a whole nother direction that nobody had ever taken it before. I thought it was revolutionary, and I think that, like I said, some of the actors said this was repertory theater. They were playing different characters. Yeah. These were trained actors. And oh, by the way, a lot of them were brainiacs. I've researched the actors. I mean, freaking Laura Parker had a scholarship to freaking Vassar. I mean, these were brainiacs. And if they hadn't gone to college, they were trained at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. John Carlin, Catherine Lee Scott. I mean, these people were no schmuckety schmucks from Okie Doke. Anyway, I'm digressing again, but yeah.
No, you're right. I get what you're saying. They knew exactly what they were doing, and I think that's when I gave my Dark Shadows top 5, I put number 2 was Jonathan Frid being cast as Barnabas, because their initial plans was to cast some blonde-haired actor, and I'm thinking, no offense to whoever that would have been, but I think if they would have just cast some blonde-haired actor, what Jonathan Frid did most to me to really nail Barnabas, he just didn't read the script. He looked at it and said, "Wait a second, this ain't just some bloodsucker." And I think that, and credit to the writers and the directors and all that, but what I give credit to most is Jonathan Frid knowing exactly who Barnabas was before anyone else really. And I think that's when I watched Bela Lugosi, Christopher Lee before I watched Barnabas, before I watched Jonathan Frid. So when I saw the cough in the hand, I knew what was coming. I knew a vampire was coming. But this was not Bela Lugosi. This was not Christopher Lee. This was something so different that I had never ever seen before in my life, and and it was imitated afterwards. And when I look at, movies like, when I look at a series like Angel, or the one series with the vampires with Keith Sutherland, Lost Boys, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The father who sort of like wants a mother to his vampire children. It's like he's charming though, like Barnabas. He isn't trying to like grab her by the neck and bite her. He's courting her, what Barnabas would have done. So I think there's been many imitators of Barnabas, but there's only been one actual Barnabas Collins.
Yeah, and one thing, I know Jonathan Fritz said he was nothing like Barnabas. However, I think that Jonathan Frid pulled on he was from a upper middle class WASP family, and he pulled from that. He was polished. He was a gentleman. I mean, I know he was trained. He went to college and got his MFA at Yale, but I think that he did pull on some of either things that he saw or how he was brought up in his own family, because I could recognize that upper class waspness, and he was smooth, man. He was really his character was such a gentleman. And from what I've heard, and I have some friends here in San Diego that knew him in the 60s when he was out here playing at the Old Globe Theater. Cool. He was a really nice man. I mean, he was a gentleman.
What were your thoughts on Laura the Phoenix?
Wow. My thoughts were kind of at the beginning. If you put it in a time frame, it was the closest thing we ever saw, maybe the holidays ever mentioned on Dark Shadows. And I thought, and for like, when she comes on and she's kind of sympathetic, and I'm telling you, Diana Malay was a charmer.
Yep.
And she comes in and she's beautiful. And it was one of the only times on the show, if you remember the scene, David was upstairs getting dressed, ready to see his mom, and they were gathering as a family. And for like 5 minutes, they were happy and normal. And it's like, where's the Christmas tree? And it didn't last long when David came down the stairs and ran out like a bat out of hell after that. No. She was scary, but she was charming. And she was playing everywhere. She was playing Burke. She was playing Roger. She tried to play David, who wasn't going to have any of it, to a point. But she was dangerous. She was scary. She was wonderful. She was beautiful. I don't know if that answers the question, but I can tell you in that storyline, I saw some of the scariest things I've seen on the show. When what's his name? When Joe Haskell and Vicky's boy Frank Gardner go to that freaking crypt, and Josette opens that freaking coffin. I'm telling you, that was black and white, and the caretaker of the crypt. That was some of the best. That was one of the best scenes I've ever seen. But Laura was seriously freaking scary.
I like how Joe, who's like the most polite character in all of Dark Shadows up until this point, Joel Carruthers, he's like the guy who knows all of Collinsport, and they need somebody who was familiar with the area. And here's this doctor, this parapsychologist, Dr. Peter Guthrie. He's like, I need a favor. Like, you want me to what now?
What did you just say to me?
Yeah, right.
I know. Exactly. I forgot it was Dr. Guthrie that initiated what they had to do in the crypt. No, oh my God.
No, it's good. It's like I'm like screaming at Joe, just go, dude, just run, just nah. But Carolyn's like, for me, Joe, and it's like, oh, son of a bitch, here we go. He's gonna do it now, and then he does it.
Yeah. No, yeah. That storyline was good. I wish it could have lasted longer, but right. Diana Malay was pregnant, and nobody else knew it except for a few people on the show, and she could stay because she was gonna have the baby.
Oh wow.
And but that and you know what? It just wouldn't have been the same. It's gonna sound cliche, Joel, but those early storylines would not have been the same if they would have been in color. No. There was something about that black and white videotape, man. It made it better. It's just classic.
I think the best example of that too is when they finally transition to color. It feels natural. Like,
yes,
you've seen the show in black and white for what feels like forever, but it's felt also right. When I go back and watch this, I go back every time through the coffin box, and I've went through the thing 6 times now, and I'm back in 1897 and there's color. And when I go back again and I start over in black and white, it just feels normal. Nothing feels out of the ordinary at all. So I'm with you. The color, like when in black and white, when they started off, it feels like it just putting on its own fresh set of skin again. And then when the color comes, here comes this bright colors, and they're beautiful. Now now the reshots are interesting because I'm thinking, wow, they reshot that in just because it was in black and white, and now they're reshooting it in color. I actually like. Don't get me wrong, the color version is cool. Like when they have Maggie come back from Windcliff. But I prefer the black and white shot because I felt it was just better timing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But what were your thoughts on that?
You know, when I was watching it and I saw the transition, I felt that it did that it was. I thought, how is this going to work? But it almost felt like it was time for it to go to color. I can't explain it, but it really felt like, okay, the show is evolving to a point where you almost needed color, and in fact we were going to 1795, and they had the costumes were fantastic. You needed the color you needed that contrast in 1795 of being in color.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the best way to put it. The transcendent of color, it was ready. They were ready for it. And the colors of the 1960s at the time looked right. And then when they go back to 1795, nothing on Dark Shadows ever felt forced. There are things today that when you look at it, like when you watch something in a film, it might feel forced or a storyline. But not Dark Shadows. Nothing ever feels forced, even like when they switch it to color. It just feels, like I said, it feels natural.
The only thing that I thought was tough for them that I noticed recently is when they had to pivot from 1797 to the Leviathans. I thought that was a real rough patch. I'm a fan of the show, but boy, I don't know what was going on. I don't know if Dan Curtis had the writers doing that 3 o'clock in the morning thing, saying what are we going to do and how are we going to do it. But that I would say that was the closest to I've seen as a rough patch as far as writing goes. But technically, it was fine.
I like that the fact that they have these characters basically kidnap Barnabas. And it's like, what's going on here? And here, I do wish and maybe it would have looked weird, would have had, because they were supposed to be serpent-like creatures. I wish they would have had maybe like pythons talking, and where you could have had a person speaking over, and it, you know what I mean, like a python, maybe think the python was talking to them, because they're supposed to be serpent-like people.
Right. And
then you could have had a person like materialize out of the snake. I don't know. I'm overthinking it, but I like a lot of the Leviathan. There's the character. My favorite character is the boy Michael. I love this. That
actor was good.
Yes.
He was. I'm telling you, he was so focused, and he knew that character, and he knew what he was supposed to be doing. And talking about a kid out of control. Oh man, but that actor, although I did like Alexander, there was a scene in the shop where he was telling David to do something, and there was like a beat, and I forgot what that little actor's name was, but he turned to David Hennessy and went, "Now!" And I went, "Dang, he is killing that. He is Alexander is killing it. It was great. I know Leviathans gets bad-mouthed, kind of, you know, that it's a little wobbly, but I'm telling you, there were some good scenes, and like you were saying, it's that kid you just want to smack.
The most shocking to me, the person who they should have kept even more in the dark, but I love that how the reveal was so shocking, was Sky Rumson. You talk about stealing the show. I'm like, holy shit.
That was a twist.
Yes.
I mean, I think I commented it on the Twitter timeline. That was like, what just happened? And then when Nicholas came in, and the look on Laura Parker's face when she walks in that room, like, woo, the band's back together, but it's not the band you want to get back together. Whoa, and I'm telling you, Humbert played that. Oh my God, that was a great scene. But yeah, the whole Sky Rumson twist,
yes.
Jewel, that was, I didn't see that one coming at all.
No, it's one of the best twists in Dark Shadows, really, because Sky Rumson seems one of the most legitimate men in Dark Shadows since Burke, really. And it doesn't, every time I go back and watch it, it doesn't feel like it's too good to be true. It just feels like when they reveal it, it's still shocking to me. I'm still like trying to like, wait, what? Who? Why?
Well, you know that, you know, Angelique is so happy,
right?
And she's giving up her powers, and I thought, okay, what is it going to take for that to get all come tumbling down? And, you know, the writers did not shirk their responsibility. They really delivered on that one.
They did. I love the fact that they had Laura Parker, just when she goes to the old house, Quentin opens the door, she says, "Kiss me, Quentin." And then the hug between her and Barnabas, Laura Parker and Jonathan, it just felt so good. It felt like, oh my God, are they good? If these two team up, shit's gonna go down.
yeah. Like every little happy thing on Dark Shadows, it lasts all but 5 minutes, and then you take 5 minutes tenfold.
Right. I agree. What did you think about the way they used the I Ching? They take the I Ching ones and they time travel, right? I'm not the I Ching authority. When they started on it, only Professor Stokes. Right. You know, he gets my curiosity going. And I looked it up on Wiki, and I went, there must have been like these brainiac writers that knew a lot of shit. No. And I was impressed. I thought it was fascinating. And I asked an elderly friend of mine, I said, do you know what I Ching is? She said, I know what I Ching is. And I said, well, let me tell you what they're doing in Dark Shadows. I thought it was so creative. Right. I thought it was so fascinating. Because you have this really ancient thing and from what I understand, the Chinese are still trying to figure out I Ching. Yeah. The modern day, and I just thought it was brilliant. I mean, I was impressed. And of course, there's Dark Shadows and 1897. It just stands out. It just keeps rolling and snowballing, and I don't know where they came up with some of that stuff. I mean, when Thayer David, when Petofi kisses David Hennessy on the cheek, and he turns.
I want to know if I wanted to be a fly on the wall to see the rehearsals, but to see if David Thayer coached, you know, he coached David Hennessy, you know, to be that character. Right. I'm all about the creative rehearsal process and like what was going on at that time. But that was, and the way David Hennessy looked into the camera and he, Joel, I don't know. I'm going on and on about that, but that was something else.
No, man, that's what this channel's for, is to go on and on. So it's to have fun and talk about Dark Shadows. But
and I really did just one quick thing about 1897. I just thought Nancy Barrett doing Pansy Faye with her musical comedy background. I just thought she's just a spitfire of talent. There was one scene, and they always talk about, where they had to turn because they were cracking up. She was talking to David Selby at the entrance, and she was doing this business where Pansy Faye was flirting with them, and she was doing this up the coat, and they go outside the door, and David Selby turns around, and it's because I think he was going to crack up because she was smiling and laughing, and he ran off. She's a phenomenal actress. But yeah, I had to do a shout out to Pansy Faye.
No, right. She just the duet, Pansy. And here's the thing too. Nancy Barrett also sings as Charity as well too, Charity Trask. So I mean, she does an amazing job from switching to Charity to Pansy and back. Mm-hmm. It's like they're literally having her as two different characters at the same exact time. And then David, like you said, David Hennessy. You want to talk about the coldest stare with a black glove on, and he's got them gloves on, and it's like,
yes,
it's the child from hell. He's back. That's what I thought.
He's back.
Right. I agree.
Oh man, it just as a quick side thing, did you read the article the interview that Katherine Lee Scott did with him in Fangoria a few months ago?
No, I didn't get to read it yet.
Okay, I read it, but one thing that he did say is that, and it was so cool. He said, I wasn't around a lot of my friends and people my age, but he said, it was almost like he said, damn, but man, I was on that set. And I knew this was great, and I was having the best time as a kid. I went, yes,
right.
It's a great article. Read it when you get a chance.
I will.
David Hennessy is. He that's a whole other story. That's another guy that's just brilliant.
I think the one thing too is these characters, you could tell they were having a good time because they knew what they were doing. And it's like the moment that cracks me up every time I watch it is when Quentin and the attorney are like conjuring Satan. And David Selby's character is drinking. Quentin's drinking like he always is. And as soon as the door cracks open, he faints. He goes down. I'm like, I roll every time I watch that scene. I'm like, oh my God.
Exactly. It's like here's the attorney, and I can't remember the Humbert's character's name, but he's like, would you just let me do this? And how are you going to get Satan in here and you're drunk? Like, I can't do all this. And I'm like, dang, this is fucked up.
It is. No, it is. It's beautiful though. It's like, it all fits. It's just, it's the perfect time for him to faint. But then when you see the serious, it's like, oh shit, there's the Reverend, there's Gregory Trask.
Yeah, which that's kind of a metaphor, don't you think, Joel? Like it was supposed to be Satan, and ooh, there's Reverend Trask.
Right.
Is there really a difference? I mean, there's these writers on the show that really say that there's a lot of gray area. Okay, these are evil people, but the good people, the evil people turn out to be good people, and the people that are supposed to be good are really bad people.
Yes.
And it's fascinating because it made me read up on the congregational movement in New England, because I do have some serious New England roots, and that whole it's very interesting. The whole congregational movement. Not to say that it was bad, please, because the Congregationalists a lot of them are great people, but it was a very complicated history in New England with the Congregationalists.
Right. What were your thoughts on when Barnabas wheels himself back to 1796? He's not using. He's standing in the cemetery, and Victoria is going to be hanged. He's taken the biggest leap of his life to now save a woman who he loves, but he knows, hey, this is my friend too.
I just think that it shows, to me, I mean, he really took some chances. You know, I've just started in, we're just about ready to go full force into parallel time, which is dangerous for him. I just think it shows how people are important to him, and this is some, and I think, like you said, it's a friend. He loves her, and they're also friends.
Yeah.
And in a certain extent, it's his in a way, it's his extended family. And this is something that I took away, Joel, that when he when Willie opens that coffin and he comes back, and even before he you know, the curse is semi-broken and he can go out in the daytime. You know, I think family to him is so important, and it's not really said, but, you know, I think his mindset was that I lost my family in 1795, and I'll be damned if I'm ever going to lose them again. You are not going to wipe out this family. You are not taking away from them. I will give my life to keep. I said, I will die first before any more of my family. And he is so tight on the Collins family. He loves, I mean, because when he wakes up in 1967, that's all he has left. Yep. He has Liz and Roger and David and Carolyn and Vicky, and that's all that's left. The Collinwood's there, the old house is there, but they're all gone, and he is not going to lose them again. Period.
What are your thoughts on parallel time? Here we have a writer, William Headshot Loomis, or what is it, H. Loomis, and the book is like laying in the doorway, and Barnabas picks up and says, "The Life and Death of Barnabas Collins." I'm like, oh crap, and Barnabas picked it up and read it, and this is what's leading him into parallel time.
Well, I'm right in the point where we're almost at the very end of everything Leviathan, and I found when he picked up that book, and I went, oh, and then he reads about Josette, and I said, oh, here we go, he's got another case of the Josettes. And you know, that's borrowed, that's somebody else, I saw that on Twitter once, but he does. About parallel time, well, from just personally speaking, I find it fascinating. It's another storyline that seems like people are like, I don't know about parallel time. But I'm 58 years old. I went to, I'll give you an example. I'm 58 years old. 40 years ago this week, I moved into my dorm, or I was getting my classes ready at college.
Wow.
And that whole thing, and I talked to somebody recently about parallel time, and I said, there are these different time bands, and they're parallel to us because we live in different time bands and made different choices. And I think as you get older, you really start thinking about that, whether you have not a great life or not such a great life. What it's the what if thing. Yep. And I'm finding I cannot wait to get into this. And you know, like I put in the timeline the other night, there is Nancy Barrett as Carolyn Stoddard, but this is not our Carolyn. This is a whole nother Carolyn Stoddard, and I am fascinated about what I'm about to see.
I'll tell you the character I love how they have twin Laura Parkers. You have Angelique and Alexis. Mm-hmm. So she's pulling double duty in this. You have Cyrus Longworth, who's going to turn himself into a cold-blooded murderer. I love it. This is basically Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but turned up to 110 degrees. Because he's gonna go. I mean, I think honestly, the late Christopher Pinnock steals 1970. He really does. The parallel time, he steals that whole thing. I love him being a cold-blooded. He's this doctor everyone trusts. Everyone trusts Cyrus, and he knows it. And now he's going to be a cold-blooded murderer. Beautiful.
Can I give a shout out?
Go ahead. Please do.
To Chris Pinnock. I followed him on his last year on Earth on Twitter. We never met. He just seemed like he was this burst of life force.
Yeah.
Really great guy. And I've got to tell you, Joel, it was kind of I'm sorry, I'm going to just say it, I could feel it. When I was watching the episode and the sheriff was opening the door and Chris Pennock was on the other side as Jeb. I could feel his energy coming out of that video. I'm sorry, but it was like, boom, that storyline just changed. This show just changed. I mean, you could just feel Chris Pennock's energy coming out of the television. He is just so unique. As a person, or as an actor, he just brought something so unique and powerful to the show. He was just a burst of energy.
I think any of these actors could play any character, really. And Christopher Pennock, him as Jeb, he's creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, in that room, and even when he's near that room, it's like, oh God, man, just stay out, stay out of it, stay out of that room. And then my favorite scene is when Barnabas is dumping the gasoline, and he goes, there will be never any breathing coming from any room again. And I'm like, oh shit, it's on now, man. Right.
It's just total battle of the wills there. I mean, there was a lot going on, even right before they brought Chris Pennock on. I mean, there was a lot going on with the Leviathans. I do agree on that. I'm looking forward to Parallel Time. I'm looking forward to 1995. I think Patrick McRae did an essay on that storyline last year or a year and a half ago, and it got me very emotional. Yeah, I mean his essay on 19, it really got to me. I'm looking forward to that. I don't want it to end, but I know it will end sometime, but I've still got a long way to go. But it's certainly, I started rewatching it in June of 2019 just for fun, and it has really helped me get through the pandemic. We're going through some very challenging times, and I'm telling you, Jewel, some days the only thing it got me through it is that I know I was watching a couple of episodes of Dark Shadows at the end of the day.
I watch Dark Shadows with my kids, and my daughter's like, what are you doing watching this old show? Because she's 12. It's like, Daddy likes it. But I watch shows with her that she likes, so it balances out well. But I think the one thing I love most about the 1995 jump is you're getting a whole nother Ghost. The fact that you're getting this Gerard Stiles character, and you're not sure exactly what it is until they go back in time. They just all assume that Gerard's this evil son of a bitch, and that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's usually more to what they initially say a person is, and then you find out what's really going on, and you find out the whole story, and it gets a little gray with all of them.
It does. I think that the one thing I learned most about Dark Shadows is don't just judge a character on their surface. What's underneath that character. It's not just what somebody shows you, because that's deceptive. It's what you got to learn about that character. And that's something I think Dark Shadows teaches over and over and over and over again. It's one hell of a show. And I want to ask you something. There's obviously news that there could be a new Dark Shadows. What do you think? Do you think that we'll get one?
I think the chances are going to be really good, or I think they're pretty good, and I'm going to tell you why. And this comes from my theater background. I've told some people this. If theaters reopen up with live theater, I don't want to hear about COVID. I don't want to hear about all the events from the last couple 2-3 years. I don't. I think people are going to be ready for escape. So there's a zeitgeist going on, Joel. So I think people want to be taken away to a place that's not here. So I think that the time's right. I think that I agree with you and Mark. I think it needs to be a continuation, because I do not want them to do a reboot. It's got to be a continuation, and I think I've commented on who my dream cast is, and I was a little emotional when you were talking about Alexandra Isles and bringing her back before it's too late, and which is Snow. And my dream cast would be David Hennessy, Catherine Lee Scott, Nancy Baird, Alexandra Isles, just to give the baton to the next generation. That's my dream.
Yep.
Reality, no, they could hire other actors to do it like they did the audio dramas, but I think it needs to be a continuation. And I just absolutely love the way you thought about bringing back Barnabas. Man, that's harsh, but it is good. I love that. That is good writing.
I'm a fan fiction writer, so when I thought about Barnabas, about bringing him back, I thought, how would you bring him back? He would be dead, right? So to me, the one person that Julia would trust with anything Barnabas would be Quentin. And so Quentin would have the vial of blood, and he knows where Barnabas is buried. He would know, because they would have made sure to tell him, and he would have oversaw it. I mean, he's still the werewolf, for God's sake. So he can't die. He can't age. He's watching Collinwood close enough he sees what's going on. He's not living there, but he knows. He hears things. And he senses, here's this new generation, something's coming for them. And he goes to Barnabas' grave. He just opens a coffin. He has a vial of blood. He looks at him. He looks at the blood. We need you, old man. And he pops it open, pours on the blood, and here's Barnabas. He's back. Now, because I think you do this by the end of season 1. Because this way you've built your young cast who are interesting, but they're in trouble and they need help. And who's been the one hero time after time who has fought all odds, and that has been Barnabas, to come help them. Here is this cousin from England. You're from where? England.
Well, one thing that I want to just mention, because I know we're running on to an hour, but I want to mention, if you have a chance, I am really enjoying the Dan Ross books, and some are better than others, but I'm telling you, he takes you to some places that are so dark and so damn scary. I'm like, what? And I in the continuation, they should take a look at some of those, because there's one of them that's the Curse of the Mummy, where they do the mummy motif, and they bring in Maggie Evans, and there's a cousin named Dr. I think it's Anthony Collins, and you're reading the character. I know that Dan Ross had Thayer David in mind for that, and I could hear Thayer David in that character. It is really cool, and I'll just give you, I won't spoil anything, but all these people that have always wondered what a Christmas was like at Collinwood, I'm not going to tell you what book that's in, but it's in one of those books, and it's really cool. There's some twists, scary, but there is one of those books where there is a New England Christmas at Collinwood. So I really suggest that if people get a chance to start picking up those books and reading them, because they are a lot of fun.
I'm going to start picking them up probably around November, because that's my birthday month. So I'm going to start picking them up then, because I just picked up the Dark Shadows Day book, and I've been reading along on my channel. But so that's what I've been up to on my channel. I've been reading along on it and doing that. But before I let you go, I do want to pitch to you what I want to see in the Dark Shadows trailer. That we see darkness, but we hear seagulls and we hear the waves, and we're sort of a seagull. We're pecking a worm off of a piece of wood that's standing at the end of a pier, and something's sort of like zinging. You hear like this electric sound and people talking. We gotta get it on before nightfall, and then you see something coming on in the distance, and then finally comes on. It says blue whale. and it causes the seagull to fly away. It causes us to fly away and fly up upon the waves over the Widow's Hill, and there you see the mansion, and that's where you see the old Gothic mansion, and that's when the words come on, Dark Shadows, and I think that should be the trailer.
That's great, and I actually got goosebumps right towards the end when you were explaining that. That's great, and to me, I don't know if they somehow if this can be incorporated at the very beginning, maybe the first episode. But there's my favorite quote from David Hennessy, right after the incident where he had locked up Victoria. He's talking to Matt Morgan in the hallway. And Matt Morgan says, "That's impossible." And he looks at Matt Morgan and says, "In this house, anything is possible." And that is the crux of this whole franchise.
Yep. 1000%. I agree. With Dark Shadows, this isn't a bubble. This whole world is full of possibilities. And that's what Dark Shadows exactly is.
Yeah, I agree.
Is there anything you want to add before I let you go?
You know, I think we covered it. No, I don't think so. I just be rambling. I think I've said everything I was going to say. I appreciate you, Jewel. I appreciate your conversations. I appreciate your insights on things I would never see it that way, and you've opened up different ways of looking at storylines and characters, and I appreciate you and everything that you do, and I just want to let you know that.
I thank you, man. I appreciate fans. I love Dark Shadows, and I always wanted to make a channel and talk to the fans, talk to the other Dark Shadows fans like you, Mark, John. I've said this channel, it's an open door invitation to any Dark Shadows fan who wants to come on here. So if you ever want to come on again, I'm on Twitter, man. You know that. Hit me up. For sure,
Yeah.
I'll gladly bring you back on. I had a great time here tonight.
Same here.
Thank you so much for giving me your time. I know you're probably very busy, but thank you so much, man. You have a great, great night.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was our video, guys. That was Don Schmidt. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. You guys have a great night.